So lots going on with national affairs that I want to talk about. Israel, Mamdani, the International Criminal Court, Benjamin Netanyahu. Let me recite some of the things that I'm thinking from what I've heard, and understand that anyone who charges me with you should do more investigation and before you have an opinion about something, that's not how this works. The fact remains that you can investigate something endlessly and still not be sure. And there's just so many things to look at that you got to still be able to form opinions and understand things with all the incomplete knowledge that you're going to have. And so it's like, I believe that there is a correct opinion or a correct position to have about the Middle East and what's going on over there. I believe that there's a correct position to have. And, and I think that I'm able to kind of find it. And if you observe the principles that I'm trying to observe, pretty bold, for something so complex, but let's give it a shot. So what have I heard? I know recently I was very interested in listening to Mamdani talk about arresting Benjamin Netanyahu if he comes to New York. And he did ultimately say in the video I saw that he does not have the legal authority to do it, but he would call on federal officials to do it. But I heard Mark Rubio, the Secretary of State, call the ICC, the International Criminal Court, a kangaroo court or something like that. And which, by the way, I just right off the bat, that's not good. You shouldn't call the International Criminal Court a kangaroo court. But the idea of arresting Benjamin Netanyahu on behalf of the International Criminal Court is not something that we should do at all, or do lightly. So it's something that he obviously should be permitted to come to talk to the United Nations and leave New York without being hindered. But that's kind of obvious. But the International Criminal Court should be an institution that should be taken seriously. All international institutions of the United Nations should be accorded some level of respect. Their charter, their mission is to do good things for humanity, for everyone, to look out for the interest of all people. They don't have the power to really do it yet, and maybe never, but that's neither here nor there. That's still what their job is. And so it's like, don't go off bad-mouthing the International Criminal Court. Now, I once read who were the judges on the, I can't even remember anymore. I know that Jack Smith was a member, was a person who was a prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, or some lawyer associated with it. And he was the guy that was going after Trump on the confidential documents case, which seemed appropriate. And I love when you pointed out to MAGA supporters that about that case, and that even after the Supreme Court made its decision, by the way, I actually read that decision that's saying that has total presidential immunity, is how Hakeem Jeffries would say it, because of this rogue Supreme Court. That's something I didn't even like. I mean, it's like, come on, the Supreme Court made a decision, you can read the opinion for yourself. Maybe it isn't a rogue Supreme Court. And so, of course I'm a Democrat and I would like to say that it is, but I'm just always get down to the foundation to look. They're the ones with the authority. They're the ones going to be judged by history. They're the ones who have their personal reputations on the line, and they're the ones who have to make the decision. And they did, the Jack Smith documents case. And it's interesting that Jack Smith didn't think that the prosecution was folded. He wanted to continue it, but then, of course, Trump won the election, and it had to fold at that point. There's a lot to talk about there, because it's like, well, Biden had confidential documents, yeah, but the prosecutor chose not to prosecute. We don't know what the documents were. But that's unfair. No, that's how it works. That's the system. A prosecutor with a lawyer with the authority to make the decision to prosecute decided not to prosecute. That's the system. That's how it works. Jack Smith, a lawyer with the authority to make the decision to prosecute, decided to prosecute. Took it to a grand jury and got it through a grand jury. There it is. I mean, it's worth talking about the Donald Trump, Donald Trump illegal documents case, because of understand the thinking and the background when I get to Benjamin Netanyahu in the International Criminal Court. I mean, I honestly think I understand what was going on there. Trump took a bunch of documents because whatever, he doesn't care. A National Archive person kept sending the letter, you got to give us those documents back. And because that's the law. And eventually, Trump just kept ignoring it and saying no and laughing about it, thinking it's no big deal. Maybe even thinking maybe I can goad them into searching me and then I can use that as a way. See, I'm being persecuted, but you have to look at the timelines, I guess, and wonder, did he really think he could win the presidency again at the time? That's interesting. But, there it is. When somebody who has the power to make an official decision about something makes an official decision about something, who's authorized and has the jurisdiction to do so, it should be our instincts. It should be our instincts to immediately accept that. Now, that doesn't mean that some reporter, somebody could put a lot of effort into looking at every aspect to it and then write a book about it and tell you their opinion that actually this was a corrupt decision or actually there was something else going on. But there's always something else going on. And all human decisions anyway, right? But still, that would be the point. I mean, you should just accept what the official decision is of the government, of the courts, of the whatever, the legislator. You should just accept those decisions as what was the correct thing to do until you're presented with very strong evidence to the contrary. And that really is my feeling about it. So when we look at the International Criminal Court, I don't think that the right attitude is just to attack the court, just like a lot of Democrats do right now with the Supreme Court. I can feel sympathetic with it. I'm a Democrat, but I don't like it. You know what I'm saying? Is the Supreme Court makes a decision, they made a decision. The 9 justices are the 9 justices. You know what I mean? They're the ones that got picked. And you can go back to the time where Mitch McConnell totally shafted the Democrats and didn't let Antonio Scalia get picked, and wrote out Barack Obama's Merrick Garland, and then was able to ram somebody else through within like a month. But that's the way it works. The Republicans had the power to do it. It was constitutional. It sucks, and it's egg on their face, but it's still legal, right? So you got it. So there's that Supreme Court, and they still have to make those decisions, and the decisions they make, as a rule, you should accept, unless you have strong reason not to. So I can't look at everything. I can't see everything. And that's the point I'm always trying to make. Somebody who puts the effort in some aspect of this world to deeply trying to understand it, and then they report back to you something. That's a different situation, right? Now you can, wait a minute, based upon what this guy was saying, and he looks like a straight shooter. She looks like she cared to do everything right, and she made a retroactive a decision after the fact that something was bad, something was corrupt, something was wrong, a miscarriage of justice, and now you can make a new decision. So what happened here, like why Israel is all in the in my mind is one, I've been doing TikTok lives for a while. And, off and on for about 3 months. I've made about $7 doing it. People give these little gifts and I get pennies for it. The question comes up all the time. The theme of my TikTok live is looking for hard questions. That's it. I don't guide. I usually just sit in silence and read stuff off the internet, type or work on things until somebody asks me a hard question. And then I talk about that hard question, And because a real nice departure from my very rarely watched YouTube channel, like, for this video, where, I just find myself talking and rambling, and I never edit anything. I wish I could get to editing, but, the dream might be that someday that my opinions might be interesting enough that somebody might come along and help me to edit the videos, and I can make a little bit more money and be supported a little bit more doing this. But if I were to chase down likes, if I were to chase down an audience, then I wouldn't talk about what I really feel. I would talk about the things that I talk about things that people want to hear about. or what I'm more critical of, because I'm about to talk about Israel for the exact reason that people on my TikTok live keep bringing it up. It's never ending. It's just, that's what they bring up all the time. And, so what's the other things in the news about it? 100 Democrats decided not to support funding for Israel, and John Fetterman. You know what? I never want to believe what anybody says about John Fetterman unless I hear it from his mouth himself. But there was some evidence, and I wouldn't doubt it for a second, because it seems in line with his character, that if we cut off funding from the Democrats force a funding cut to Israel and its military, then Fetterman will leave the Democratic Party. Okay, well, there it is. That's deep. You got to think about Fetterman. Who was the Fetterman before Fetterman? I guess for the Democrats was Joe Manchin, wasn't it? The West Virginia guy. So there's always going to be one, right? There's always going to be the least liberal Democrat, right? You know what I'm saying? And that one's always going to be the one that everything depends on whether or not he's going to go along with it. There's always going to be that guy. Just the Republicans have Susan Collins, so it's, that's kind of how it works. There's always going to be that one at the end. So the 100 senators, that's important. My last time I did a video about it, I called for 100,000 Palestinians to be able to come to America and immigrate, at least as refugees, knowing that it's absurd, that would never happen under Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. It's what we should do. And I did that based upon the report that I got from Matt Bevin, ABC News, if you're listening, that the only way I can judge it appears that there has been an overreaction by the Benjamin Netanyahu government to October 7th. Now, that's where I really want to talk about, because maybe I'm wrong about that overreaction. And that's exactly why something like the International Criminal Court provides a perfect opportunity for him to defend his decision-making. Now, he doesn't have to do it. I don't see why he would have to travel or say a word. There's always Zoom in the first place. But the second point would be that he should honor the charge that's been laid against him. You know what I'm saying? And send a representative to defend himself. And say, if not himself personally. And that's what he should do. Because that's why I never like Edward Snowden. You know what I mean? If Edward Snowden was doing the right thing, then go in front of a grand jury. That's why I don't like that guy, Jack. I can't pronounce his name, the CIA guy with the K, Jack Kerouac, something. I don't like him because he pled guilty. You know what I mean? If you didn't do it, if you were, and even if you did do it and it did violate a law, but the law wasn't correct or fair, you take it to a jury. That's what you do. That's what an American's default attitude should be. And to claim that the legal expenses would be so much, you don't have to pay a lawyer or anything and do it pro se. Any college-educated person probably could get, free standby counsel to get some guidance for the procedural rules, but then go up and make your case. Go up and tell everyone you didn't do it, or, that I needed to do it for very important reasons. All you need to do is get one juror to agree with you, and you're not going to jail. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't understand how somebody can plead guilty to something and you don't hold them to account for that. You know what I'm saying? The pardon of Hunter Biden may have been correct, but I doubted it. What a good president should do, what a good father would do is if, your son was, totally into drugs and all that kind of stuff, then you let him go to jail and you visit him in jail and you tell him to do the recovery programs. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what kind of system we got here? People automatically, well, in jail you'll get beat up and killed and all that other stuff. Well, maybe not. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of different kinds of jails and there's lots of different things going on. And everyone has a right to be safe. And so you could maybe you need to, make a difference at the jail. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying. It's like a different attitude that I'm talking about here. And that's what, Marco Rubio and apparently by extension Donald Trump, at least I heard Marco Rubio say it. He called the International Criminal Court a kangaroo court. No, this is a perfect opportunity for Benjamin Netanyahu to make his case, you know? And his case should start with there's some things I know I can't tell you. You know that. I got top secret information from intelligence sources. There's all kinds of things I know I can't tell you. But I tell you, in my judgment, what we needed to do is what we did. And a little bit, let's talk about why. And just forego the political bullshit of just constantly coming up with, they're a terrorist organization, they're a terrorist organization. Look, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, very well might be willing to resort to violence. But you know what? Lots of political parties are willing to resort to violence to achieve their objectives. And those three groups are political parties. That's what they are. They're not terrorist organizations, in my opinion. In any event, even if you would call them terrorist organizations, what they're going through transcends the category. You know what I mean? It's like, well, was Samuel Adams a terrorist when he, burnt down the houses of people who refused to join the American Revolution? I mean, was Robert E. Lee a terrorist? Was Ulysses Simpson, Tecumseh Sherman, who I want to come back to, was he a terrorist? I mean, it's like, I don't know, guys. I mean, it's just like this labeling thing. I mean, it transcends that, what happened there. So Hezbollah, gets their punishment from Israel. Israel's pretty slick. Blows their hands off with the pagers. The batteries that exploded. And now, apparently what Israel has done is that they've gone in and they've destroyed a large swath of southern Lebanon, the building after building after building, to create, a buffer zone so that northern Israel can be protected from Hezbollah and rocket attacks and things of that sort. And the coming drone problem that they're going to have or probably already have. And so it's like, the question is this an overreaction or is this correct? I'm not there. I'm not living a day-to-day life as an Israeli citizen in northern Israel. I'm not living a day-to-day life, as a 15-year-old kid who has Hezbollah parents. You know what I'm saying? And trying to figure out what's right and wrong. And of course, all these guys are being funded by Iran. They're getting, that's what it's told to me. I just assume that's true. Is it true? I don't know. Maybe they're able to get their own homegrown money. You know what I'm saying? And, have their own businesses where they're doing stuff like this. But I don't know. It's interesting. So what would Benjamin Netanyahu's point of view be? His point of view would be like, well, rockets came from over there. And so I called the Lebanese president and the police of Lebanon and said, they shot rockets at us. Can you go arrest those guys and give us a report? Because that's just not right. You know what I mean? And they don't do anything about it, or they're incapable of doing anything about it because Hezbollah is too tough. That's war. That's what that is. Now it's like a discussion of like the difference between limited war or total war. If you're going to go to war, what do? What's the best kind of war to go into? And that's where things get really, I can feel like a person that wants to be like Jesus and think like with the nicest mind in the world. And I can't believe that when I look at situations about war, sometimes it's like the only person that was good here was the person who was the most ruthless, the most vicious, because he put an end to the war. That's the basic story of, William, of Ulysses Simpson Grant and William Tecumseh Sherman. That's the basic story. Every general prior to them half-stepped the fight towards the South, wouldn't fight the South. They kept backing off. They kept, not pressuring them. Then when Ulysses Simpson Grant gets the job, he just constantly and overwhelmingly attacks until they are defeated. And it's like, okay, there's an attitude. Is it a violation of human rights? Is it a violation? But that's exactly what the Benjamin Netanyahu should do, is he should make his case. He should tell everyone without rhetoric, very straightforward, incident after incident after incident, dates and times where missiles were fired, you know what I mean? How they tried to get the Lebanese government to do something about it, how the Lebanese government always had an ineffectual response, And then how Israel had to take matters in their own hand, particularly when they were ignited to do so by October 7th. Now it's like I want to talk about marijuana, because this is where I'm saying something that is, in my opinion, pretty powerful. We had a war on drugs, and we were totally against marijuana for a long time. And now suddenly it's like basically legal. It's amazing how long we could do one thing and then we finally change course. That's the biggest problem that Israel has. So the decision to let Israel come into existence was made by Harry Truman. Now, a lot of people can point at that's not why. Okay, whatever. I'm an American. I'm looking at it from the American perspective. Harry Truman, and then for 70 to 75 years, our American Congress has supported Israel and its military above all other governments and militaries in that region, to the point where Israel has become a regional superpower. They probably have nuclear weapons, right? They're as tough as can be. Okay, you know what I mean? But this is where I'm worried. 100 Democrats voted against giving them more aid. It's like, will we suddenly sell out Israel? And that's the thing that because Fetterman's talking about, right? And selling out Israel, ultimately, my way of thinking about it is that if that's what Congress chooses to do, since I'm not capable of looking at everything that's going on, I can certainly listen to, I guess the easiest way to say it is a Jewish person telling me, no, we have to always kind of support it. And I'll be like, yeah, I get that. You know what I mean? But then I'll talk to Mamdani, or I'll talk to a Muslim guy. And a Muslim guy, I'll be like, AIPAC has this control over, the Jewish lobby has this control over America, and they're destroying everything with it. It's like, dude, you're just like talking for your team. That's not true. Lobbying isn't criminal. Lobbying is a good thing. People need to be able to talk to Congress, God, sometimes I say to myself, how I wish I could have a Congress I could really be proud of. But they're just bashed and constantly and never-endingly, and maybe deservingly so. I mean, the stock trading and all the other stuff. I just wish I could have a Congress I could really, really be proud of. But it is my Congress, and it's the center of the American government, and it's the center of America. It's where these elected representatives who speak for us get together and thrash it out and decide how to spend our money and decide what's right and wrong. And they have access to much more information than I do. It's like I have to let them make their choice. And so that's ultimately where I am with it. I have a deep feeling based upon what Matt Bevin said in ABC News, if you're listening, like 4, 5, 6 months ago, when he talked about Mosul and what's happened in Gaza, that the Israeli government has ultimately overreacted. Ultimately, the only defense that I can make for Israel to their overreaction is that it wasn't an overreaction. It was total war. They meant to do what they were doing. They had to go into Gaza, destroy every building that's there, right? Because the tunnels. Because they had to. And total war was the only way to have peace. The only way to not be attacked anymore. The flip side is the game's over. Harry Truman made his decision 47 years ago. 75 years of giving money to Israel and its military. And it's like we're at this point now where it's like, we can't help you anymore. It's like it just is never going to end. Maybe Israel shouldn't have come into existence in the first place in 1947. And I don't want to go into the religious stuff because I've done that many times before. But I'm profoundly do not believe that God has ever communicated to anyone. So the Jews are not the chosen people. Moses was not communicated to on Mount Sinai by God. That's not true. The 10 Commandments did not come from God. But everything I just said is true to Roman Catholicism, and everything I just said is true to Islam too. Muhammad was not a prophet. He wasn't the last prophet. There never has been a prophet. So the religious thing for me is off the table. My way of thinking about it, the religious thing is utterly off the table. But we know that seems to be what permeates everything about this conflict in some way or another. It's baffling. You know, I've listened to videos online. I've listened to a lot of Farid Responds, David Wood, and stuff that's pro-Islam, anti-Islam. I'm never going to read the Quran. Apparently, the Quran is filled with a lot of anti-Semitic stuff, right? I have no doubt. Some Muslim scholar could sit down with me and open up the book, and I could point to something that sounds anti-Semitic, and they'll be like, aha, and they'll tell me why it's not. And I'll be like, oh, okay, I guess I just missed that. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure they can do it. But, I mean, you just look at it at its face, and the Quran is just filled with hatred of Jews. That's what it seems to be to me. Though I've met many Muslims in my life that are like peaceful people, loving people, take care of their families, and they say their religion is a religion of peace and love, and it's about, good things, and maybe so. And you know what? If you really break it down, everyone has their own approach to their own religion. It's like, so like there must be a massive difference about the approach to the religion to, one of the Ayatollahs of Iran, when one was just killed or whatever, or like Erdogan in Turkey. Both Muslims, right, but probably very different approaches to have their understanding of Islam. And what I've seen amongst Jews, yeah. You got a conservative, I was listening to Closer to Truth video, there was a Jewish rabbi there. It was like, I don't believe Moses was talked to by God on Mount Sinai, which is what I believe. But he's still a Jewish rabbi. I wish a Catholic priest could stay a Catholic priest and be like, I don't believe in any of the miracles of the Bible. They're not worthy of belief. It's like people don't walk on water. But the miracle of the resurrection, which I know is false, is still nevertheless, why do we hold on to it so well? Because it's an expression in our hearts for the desire to not die, to conquer death, for us wanting to live in this world. So among other things, it's a very profound expression of what we human beings want, this belief in the resurrection. We want it so bad that we're blinded to the truth that it's not true because of the second law of thermodynamics. Physics has conclusively answered that question, right? So, yeah. So I guess that's about all I have to say about that. I like Mamdani very much. I kind of, right now, you could ask me who I wanted my next president to be, I want Cory Booker. There's a lot of reasons why I want Cory. I think he'd be great. AOC has the charisma for it, and to tell you, you see her a lot because everyone just, she's great, and everyone wants to talk about her, whether it's positive or negative. She attracts attention like a lightning rod attracts lightning. But here's a shout out for Rahm Emanuel and Josh Shapiro. I mean, I think I've listened to Rahm give speeches where on the YouTube video, it didn't even crest 1,000 people, but I thought he was spot on. I thought he was remarkably sharp. And, he's got all the right credentials to be a president of the United States. And I think the time probably has come for us to have a Jewish president. Rahm Emanuel or Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania, who certainly has the gravitas, to do the job. I mean, either one of those guys, could really be put in a position where they understand everything that's at play, and they understand everything that's in play, and they can tell us exactly what we need to do for Israel, and tell Israel what they need to do differently. Maybe the decision to do total war on Gaza was not a good decision. Or maybe it wasn't total war and I just need to be better informed. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu should go to the criminal court, whether in person or on Zoom or something. And don't badmouth that institution, but make his case. Let them make a judgment. That's what a good person would do.